The Watership Down podcast is intended for listeners who are familiar with the plot. There will be spoilers. This episode is scripted, narrated, recorded and edited by Newell Fisher. Hello, and welcome to the Watership Down podcast episode 180, a culturally significant number here in the UK, as it is the highest possible score in darts, in which we'll be looking at the fourth 10-minute segment of the second episode of the 2018 Netflix version of Watership Down. This week I'm back to recording and releasing episodes on more or less the same day as our 2-week break is over. Just one item of borough keeping. Can I ask anyone who follows the podcast on Twitter or Threads to let me know, as I may stop posting episodes on those platforms if no one is picking them up there. I get plenty of engagement via Facebook, Instagram and YouTube, so I may just stick with those in future, though both accounts on Twitter and Threads will stay active. It's just that they will be used a lot less, as each episode will no longer be posted on those platforms, unless I am told that there are listeners picking up on episodes on those platforms. It's just that the lack of engagement on both indicates to me that that is not happening. So then, let's get back to our favourite down. Netflix miniseries, Episode 2, Part 4, Labyrinths. Part 4 of Episode 2, The Raid, runs from 31:05 to 39:25, and the reverse timings are 18:40 to 10:20. The equivalent chapters from the book are chapters 20, A Honeycomb and a Mouse, 25, The Raid, and 27, You Can't Imagine It Unless You've Been There. This is the point at which the intertwining of the three strands of the story gets so complicated that I felt I needed to entirely abandon trying to name the 10-minute segments after chapters of the book, and instead try to find some kind of thematic link, as the makers of this version of Watership Down do try to parallel the events of the three storylines. The link I've chosen to make for this episode is that of labyrinths, or mazes, as all three strands involve being in unexpected tunnels or otherwise complex physical and mental environments which rabbits would find stressful. Having just met General Windwart, we are back on Watership Down, where we see two proper burrows have been dug into the earth bank of the new warren. In the left-hand burrow, Hawkbit and Dandelion are making good progress, and Hawkbit wonders why does think they are so good at digging. He suggests one of them go and help Strawberry out, as she is digging the other burrow on her own. His body language suggests strongly that he thinks that should be him. Just then, Strawberry unexpectedly breaks through from her digging and congratulates them on their tunnel. Hawkbit wonders how she has had time to dig 2 tunnels, and then, moving into a part of the new warren, they are struck dumb in amazement. Not only has Strawberry dug 2 tunnels, she has created an entire great burrow. She sounds embarrassed about having had to leave some tree roots in place, as they weren't as thick as at Cowslip's warren, and she suggests they call it the honeycomb. Hawkbit, for once, has absolutely no agenda, as he congratulates her and says she has given them a home. And it has to be said that the visual realisation of the honeycomb here is beautiful. It is now night time. At the foot of the down, Bigwig decides Hazel has had long enough to decide what to do. But Hazel is gone, leaving the sleeping Fiver on his own. The camera tracks up to Nuthanger Farm in the distance. We see Hazel approaching the farm on his own. Entering the farmyard, he creeps past the sleeping dog and arrives at the outbuilding that contains the hutches. But the top hutch, the one that contained the does, has gone. In desperation, Hazel enters the lower hutch. It is empty. He stares at the farmhouse and sees the other hutch in the conservatory. And suddenly, we are about to step way outside the original story of Nuthanger Farm. The Hazel who said that humans are to be avoided at all costs approaches the farmhouse. Creeping by the dog again, he looks inside the conservatory, but there is no way in. So he moves along the farmhouse and arrives at a cat flap. Checking the coast is clear, he enters the farmhouse. We are back at Efrafa. Holly, Blackberry and Bluebell are being escorted somewhere in a group, along a tunnel deep within Efrafa. Holly asks Heisensley where they are going. She says they are to be marked and explains the significance of this. In the case of her and the other rebellious does, they are being remarked. Blackberry says this is just a prison. Nettle, another of the does, says they are told this is all to keep them safe, that it is better to give up some liberty for safety. She adds that this is a load of old Lendry beard. Heisenthal orders her to keep her voice down as Vervain tells them to hurry up. They enter a large industrial space where moonlight floods in from the shaft of an iron spiral staircase. An Owsler officer is there to meet them. It is Campion. In a pit at the base of this space is the most disturbing creation of this version of Ephrafa. An old, thin, wheezing, lop-eared rabbit with one claw grown extra long, which he scrapes on metal, keeping it sharp. He is almost like an evil shaman priest of Ephrafa, a terrifying figure in whom the power to give rabbits their mark is solely vested. Marking a rabbit could surely be done easily enough by any strong rabbit, so this is entirely something other than practicality. It is deliberate, performative cruelty, and it is work that he clearly enjoys. The rabbit, who I am fairly sure is Campion, asks the group who is first. We haven't encountered him before, and he doesn't say it in a way that is particularly cruel in contrast to the monster below. With Vervain embodying the sadism of Ephrafa along with others, we seem to be back to the slightly nicer Campion last encountered in the 1999 TV series. But is he redeemable? We will find out. Nettle says she will go first. She is not afraid. Sliding down the awkward slope each victim has to negotiate, she arrives at the lair of the shaman. As Holly watches this horror, he asks Heisenthal why no one tries to escape. She says to keep his voice down. Here even the soil has ears. Even if you did manage to escape, anyone you left behind would be killed, she says. Collective punishment, another feature of tyranny. The shaman priest rabbit approaches Nettle. He pins her down and sniffs her in a very disturbing manner. We hear Nettle cry out in pain. Holly notices Campion look away and tells him he is part of this. Campion says he is just obeying orders. That's what soldiers do. Holly says, as someone who knows, that what it takes to be a good soldier is not always what it takes to be a good rabbit. Nettle emerges in pain. Blackberry is next. Heisenthal asks Bluebell his name. She tells him to think of something he really likes. He mentions eating sow thistle on a spring morning. And he is next, as Campion orders him forward. Holly quietly says to Heisenthal that he can see she is good and also strong. He suggests to her that they make a break for it that night, taking as many with them as possible. Her response is simple. He knows nothing about her, and for all she knows, he could be working with the Ephrafa Owsler. The shaman priest lifts his long claw over Bluebell. We are now in the kitchen of the farmhouse at Nothanger Farm. On the radio, a romantic song is playing in which the singer asks to be saved, the word save having cut across our last sight of Bluebell. Entering the main kitchen, Hazel sees a painting on the wall of a dead rabbit about to be prepared for eating. We see a chopping board and knife on a work surface above Hazel. The song is now about voices saying you should let go. From the kitchen, Hazel can see the farmer's wife in front of the TV. She snorts and coughs loudly. And then he sees the cat, asleep in its basket next to a blazing fireplace. And now he sees the hutch in the conservatory. Hazel creeps past the cat, so close we can hear its purring along with the crackling of the fire. He looks back as the cat lifts its head, then goes back to sleep. Hazel is reassured. Then it looks up again. It is awake and has sensed something. Hazel arrives at last at the hutch. Clover awakes and calmly says that he just keeps coming back. He replies that he must like her a little bit, and adds that they must have moved the hutch indoors because of what they did to it on the first rescue attempt. Clover says they have repaired it using bits of metal. If Hazel can get them out, they should be able to open it from inside. Hazel easily extracts one loosely applied nail. At Clover's prompting, two other does help her push, and the hatch comes loose. As the four rabbits in the hutch emerge, Hazel makes it clear they aren't free yet. A human and a cat are in the room with the fire. They have to get out to the fields. Laurel climbs up on a box and Hazel asks what she is doing and to concentrate. Suddenly, they all look in the direction of the fire and gasp. We are back in Ephrathah, above ground at night. Holly, Blackberry and Bluebell are recovering from being marked. Blackberry says his wound cut deep and won't stop bleeding. Holly says they have a choice to make, stay or run. He is interrupted by Vervain, who tells the left hind mark to listen up. He introduces the weak and pitiful Blackavar, who is brutally paraded past them, as Vervain says to remember him if they ever think of running away. Blackavar stops to look at Holly for a moment before being barged onward. Blackberry turns to Holly and says that settles it. Holly agrees. He says to run and don't look back on his word. All three slowly move further out into the Silflay field. Vervain tells an Owsla officer that he will take them with him. But it isn't clear who he means as he spots the 3 rabbits moving away. Heisensley and another doe also notice. Vervain shouts at them to stop, and Holly, Blackberry and Bluebell begin to run. Comparison with the book. Where to start with this one? Well, to begin with, Strawberry practically digging the entire Foundation warren on Watership Down on her own, rather than being an advisor in a truly cooperative effort, may have comedy value due to her being a doe and therefore much better at digging, but it is a cheap laugh. The section of the book in which a bunch of buck rabbits overcome their aversion to digging and create an incredible warren is, you could argue, exactly the kind of storyline that would be found inspiring in a human story about women overcoming adversity without men. Instead, we are treated to this simplistic nod towards feminism, set in a world in which, to repeat myself, it has already been established that bucks are genuinely rubbish at digging. Or am I just being a fragile man? Anyway. Hazel deciding to go back to Nuthanger Farm on his own, not just to scout it out but to rescue the does, which apparently required 3 rabbits before, is ridiculous and completely detracts from his character yet again. And as for entering the actual farmhouse again on his own, at that point he is frankly no longer worthy of being called a leader of the calibre of the Hazel of the book. Entering the house is an obvious plot device for a Netflix audience, but it is stupid in the extreme. In the book, if the hutch had been in the farmhouse, that would have been the end of the raid, however sad that was. And the fearful gasps of their rescued does before we switch back to Ephrathah are an indication of just how stupid this plan was. As I've said before, I have a sneaking admiration for this portrayal of Ephrathah that takes it to its extreme, though this does not extend to the plot that surrounds Ephrathah. The rabbit-marking shaman priest, as I have labelled him, is a good example of the kind of performative cruelty that humans are unfortunately good at. And as Woundwart's Warren effectively imitates human despotism, it works for me. It also gives Campion, as yet not a major character, an early chance to show his better nature than those around him. However, I accept that this episode would be completely unacceptable to an originalist. Overall then, in spite of the above criticisms, this is an exciting section of this version of Watership Down, with the swapping between Nuthanger and Ephrathah effectively building tension and providing appropriate cliffhangers. And we should remember that in the book, both of these storylines do in fact take place at the same time. It's just that we only learn of events in Ephrathah on Holly's return to Watership Down. Next time, the rabbits of Watership Down encounter the lights.